In order to handle updates for our ESXi hosts, we're going to want to use the vSphere Update Manager. If you're using free ESXi, you can manually install updates. It's a little bit complicated. We'll take a look at it in another video just in case it's something you need to do. But typically what we're going to do is use VUM or the vSphere Update Manager to do that. So we're going to install the vSphere Update Manager server. Once again, I'm going to do that on my vCenter server, but as a best practice, and just in terms of the amount of space required, we may want to do that on another machine. Now, I'm going to just go ahead and click install here. We can see that the prerequisites are effectively the same as what we had before for vCenter and the single sign-on service and so on. We're going to get yet another SQL Server instance to provide the database for the update manager. And we're also going to need to provide sufficient amount of space to go get all the various updates for all the different editions of VMware that we're using in our environment in order to make them available to our hosts. Now, it's going to mention 120 gigs of storage. That's probably not necessary, but of course, if you were going all the way back to ESX2 and we had multiple versions of ESX to support, as well as multiple versions of ESXi potentially to support, yeah, that would be a lot of updates. We may need to provide more space for this as new editions of VMware come out. But we are able to specify what we need and what we don't, so that's going to help us manage the space required. So in the welcome, I'm just going to go ahead and click Next. Again, with patents and the license agreement. And notice it says download updates from the default sources immediately after installation. That's fine, but we may want to check and see what it's planning to download and what versions and so on. So I'm just going to turn that off and say Next. It's asking us to provide the details of how to connect to vCenter. This is not a new user. I may be able to just click Next, but as a best practice, I'm going to go ahead and provide the login details that I would normally use for my vCenter, which by default, it would be the Windows administrator. We do have quite a few user accounts that are potentially in use now. We've got the root user account on the ESXi hosts. The single sign-on service has the admin account, a VPX user account. We have additional accounts that we might want to create either on the hosts or in vCenter or Active Directory users that we've given permissions in vCenter anyway. So between IP addresses and user accounts, there's a fair amount of configuration management that's going to happen for any kind of a VMware environment. So in this case, once again, it wants to install a SQL Server Express instance. If we wanted to use an alternative on another server, for example, or something that was already installed, we can set up an ODBC connection and then have it used here. I'm just going to go ahead and have it install another instance for me. Now, in this case, it's a little different than how it's worked with some of the other services where it just tries to do reverse lookups and things like that to validate. And here you can actually pick the IP address that you want to have it associated with or the name you want to have it associated with. And once again, we could customize the ports, but I'm not going to do that. But as you can see, they're not in conflict with any of the other ports that we've already used. So even though we have a few services now on my vCenter server using SSL, that's okay. I do have an internet connection, but I don't use a proxy server to access the internet. I'm just going to leave this I have internet connection, want to configure proxy settings unchecked and click Next. Now in this case, I don't really need to change where I'm downloading anything. It's all a virtual machine anyway, so my C drive can accommodate it. But if you wanted to move it, you could. Now moving the download patch location is really probably going to be the best idea because that's where we're going to accumulate most of our storage. So as you can see, we've gotten a warning here that we don't have 120 gigs of space available. That's not necessarily a problem. Potentially, we can always expand the space available to it later, which again is one reason why using something other than the boot drive of the virtual machine, in this case, because my VUM server is a virtual machine, if I install my patches on D or something, it's easier to expand those disks. I can make their VMDKs larger, and then I can simply go into Windows and say, I want to extend this partition to take up the new space available on its disk. Rather harder to do that with the boot partition. So I'm just going to go ahead and say OK here, and then click Install, and off it goes to complete our VUM installation process. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and click Finish to shut down the installation.